And welcome to the Pro Bono Partnership of Atlanta's monthly webcast series. This morning we have Christine Green with us from Stanton Law, and she'll be speaking to us about solving the problem employee performance improvement plans. Before Christine goes on and tells us more about this information, I'd like to tell you a little more about the Pro Bono Partnership of Atlanta. Our mission is to maximize the impact of pro bono engagement by connecting a network of attorneys with nonprofits in need of free business legal services. Our clients must be 501c3 nonprofit organizations located in or serving the Metro Atlanta area, serving low-income or disadvantaged individuals, and otherwise unable to afford legal services. If you're interested in more information about our organization or in applying to become a client, please visit our website at the address on the website. Also, on our website, we have a great number of resources, including today's webcast, which will be posted there in a couple of days. And a brief disclaimer, please keep in mind that the information that Christine will be sharing with you today is just general advice. If you have specific questions about your organization, please reach out to your attorney at Pro Bono Partnership of Atlanta. Thank you, and Christine.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, and I'll reiterate, this is not going to be legal advice, no attorney-client privilege here, but just general advice. So I'm Christine Green. I work at Stanton Law Firm. We are a small boutique firm specializing in HR management and counseling, business management for small to mid-sized businesses. There are only 10 attorneys there, so we keep it pretty small and casual. We do a lot of litigation avoidance of contested issues, EEOC charges of discrimination, demand letters. We also do litigation. We can pretty much provide anything that a business would need. I specialize in employment discrimination of all kinds. I have a niche in the Americans with Disabilities Act in employment as well as in public accessibility. I've been practicing law for 10 years. I started in Alabama, where I grew up, and I've been in Atlanta for 2 years and working with Stanton Law for 3. Before Stanton Law, I worked at some big corporate law firms, and it left me pretty overwhelmed and worn out. So I like Stanton because it's casual. We're jean-friendly. I have on jeans today. You can't see that, but we're also dog-friendly, and we work when we need to work, but we don't grind it out, 365, 24/7. So, but the thing that I really love about Stanton Law is that we focus on efficiency. Like, what is the most effective and cost-efficient way to handle a legal solution? We don't want to burn your money litigating something that could be avoided in a much cheaper and easier fashion. Like, how can we get your business back to business to avoid disruption and distraction and ultimately just to avoid legal problems? I'd rather you call me about problem employee now than the employee that sued you later, because you're going to be a lot grumpier about it and less excited to see me. So so one of the ways that we do this is through the performance improvement plan, and that's what our topic is for today. So we'll get into that. Okay. On this one, what we'll do. Okay, so a performance improvement plan, what it can do. It serves a lot of purposes. Big one is that it fills documentation holes. So if you've been pretty lax on your performance management, you've maybe done the annual evaluation sometimes, and you have this problem employee that is never living up to your expectations, and you may have some concerns about terminating them because you're afraid you're going to end up with some kind of discrimination claim or a wage and hour claim or something like that. The performance improvement plan can fill those documentation holes, and I'll explain that in a minute. It will also engage your management. So if you have a supervisor who's not skilled or experienced with having direct conversations, like giving constructive and honest feedback, they're going to learn how to do that. They're also going to learn what performance management means, and so after you get through this performance improvement plan process, they're going to be better managers going forward. You're going to contain your legal costs as described. You're going to minimize disruption in the workplace without having some dramatic termination. You're really going to possibly rehabilitate a struggling employee. The performance improvement plan is not some means to an end. It's not a mean to terminate somebody. You have to go into it with an open mind, because you can truly rehabilitate someone. There could be someone that's working for you that really wants to stay there, wants to do a good job, but they are struggling. So this can help to determine where are they struggling, why are they struggling, what can we do to help them be better. Then you're also going to get rid of the 5%ers, and I'll describe the 5%ers next. So next slide. A 5%er is that employee that is always late. They're always leaving early. They are the ones whose computers crash first. Their driveways freeze over first and thaw out last. Like, they're the ones who always have the problems, the excuses. And they don't take feedback well. They get really defensive when you try to improve or suggest certain changes. And you really don't want to keep those guys around. I'm sure you're all thinking of that 5%er you have right now. But you're like, how do I get rid of them? And what's the problem with kind of keeping them around longer? Well, they drag everybody down. Like, if you let an employee get by without meeting your expectations, then everybody else sees that. All the other employees see that, and their productivity goes down. They see Joe coming in 20, 30 minutes late on a regular basis. Well, Bill's like, why should I get here on time? I have no incentive to. And that ultimately is going to cause your talent flight. People who feel like, I do a really great job and I'm never appreciated, I'm not rewarded, so why should I stay here? So I'm going to go somewhere else because they always let Joe do whatever and I'm, sticking to it. So if you discipline Joe for coming in, it's kind of like when you were a kid and your brother or sister got in trouble for not doing what they're supposed to. You kind of feel better about yourself. You're like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. So, it's like an indirect reward. And so by doing these kind of ongoing performance and discipline actions, you end up rewarding your good employees. You're documenting the bad employees, and they're either going to improve or they're going to leave, either on their own or you're going to have the proper documentation to get them to leave. So getting rid of the 5% can really result in a happier ship all around for everyone. You're also going to end up with a lot more respect for the managers. So people are going to start following the rules when they see a manager implementing the rules. So, okay, preempting the 5%. There are a lot of ways to keep them out. Ideally, you start at the beginning, the application process. That's their first test. If you give someone an application and they leave half of it blank, I think they failed, So why let them come to work for you? And then also do your due diligence. Check references, do the background checks, do the drug screens, do all the stuff you're supposed to do. And that can weed out some of those 5%ers. Then we get to the ongoing performance management and the annual evaluations. A lot of businesses have a tendency to fall on the annual evaluation. It's like, I'll just save it for that, weird, awkward conversation we're going to have anyway. But the problem is that when, you sit down with someone in an annual evaluation and you tell them something that they did, 6 or 7 or 8 months ago that was not okay with you, and now we want to terminate you for it, that's surprising. That's hard for anybody to hear. And you feel like, well, I really wish that they would have communicated that to me already. I feel disrespected, I feel surprised, and now I'm angry. And angry people sue. They're the problems. And if you can keep people from getting angry, then you can avoid a lot of litigation problems. And keeping them from being surprised is a way to keep them from being angry. No one should be surprised when they walk into an annual evaluation and get a crappy result. They should know, I really wasn't doing the right thing here. So it's kind of I'm going to leave, or I know that this wasn't my best year. I want to improve. You're going to have two different responses there. So, okay. Next one, I've kind of already got into it. Angry people sue. Surprise and disrespected people get angry. I know that managing can be really hard, but being direct and honest with people is a management skill, and we can develop that through the PIP process. And the PIP process is way cheaper than litigation. I've got a case in federal court right now, and the bills are just astronomical. So, like, if you want to save money, do this process. Okay, next slide. 4 possible outcomes. So you've got the 5 percenters. Some of those people will, it's like self-selecting. When they hear that we're going to put you on a performance improvement plan, some of them are like, dang, I'm not going to get by with being lazy anymore, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave. But there are good employees out there who will successfully rehabilitate, and you can have success stories. You're going to also justify a separation with the documentation. And also, if you set a performance improvement plan for, say, 60 days, and we'll get into kind of picking the timing of that in a minute, but say you're 30 days into it, and the employee is obviously not participating. They're not doing what they're supposed to do on a daily or weekly basis under their performance improvement plan. Well, you can go ahead and decide right there to end the employment. You've got the documentation already for the 30 days of insubordination and decision making of, I'm not going to really do anything here. So you're not locked in to 60 days. And the same thing with the employee. They may find, gosh, this is really harder than I want. This is more time than I want to be working. I would really rather be doing something else, and they'll leave on their own. So this is all a positive for the employer, whatever the outcome is. So let's go to the keys to the successful PIP. Number 1, and this is super important, is to have a sincere effort and attitude to help rehabilitate. That means this is not some sham. You really want them to get better. And by having that attitude and following through on that, you're not going to give them more evidence for a lawsuit. Because if you go into it thinking this is really the way we're going to get Joe out the door, then it's going to show in the documentation, especially if Joe tries. And then when you fire Joe anyway, Joe sues and he's like, and look at this, so it just, if you don't have that sincere, genuine, open mind going into this, then you're going to create more problems for yourself. So another successful key is having employee buy-in on the process, on the goals, on the roadmap. And I'm going to show you guys some snippets of a sample performance improvement plan, and it leaves room for the employees to buy in and provide their input. Like, these are the goals that I want to set for myself, and this is what I think a reasonable goal would be. And this is how I think we can get there. So having them buy in is a big part of this process. It's like a mutual obligation. So both sides have to make this process a priority. These take some time. This is going to require your management to be a little more involved. And if your managers don't have that time, you've got to find someone else who can manage and monitor this process. Because otherwise it's going to just, like I said, create more issues down the road. You also have to have thorough documentation. During this process, there are going to be check-ins. There are going to be daily check-ins, weekly check-ins. The employee is going to have the obligation to arrange those and lead those. But as you do that, you need to document that, make notes, send emails, and follow up. And I know that some people say don't create notes, out of fear that you're going to create some problem document in a lawsuit down the road. Well, if you have a genuine intent of rehabilitating this employee, you're more than likely not going to create a landmine. And obviously, you want to avoid referencing any protected category. So Don't reference a prosthetic arm in your notes. Don't reference race, religion, gender, things like that. Pregnancy. You just want to stay away from anything outside of what performance looks like, and that will keep you on task and keep you in the safe zone. So, okay. Next slide. Solve the problem. How do we do that? Next slide. Is the situation ripe? Meaning, is this the right kind of situation for a performance improvement plan? Not every time you want to terminate someone will you need to do this. You may have proper documentation. You may have a project where they just totally botched, or two projects, or glaring evidence where they poured the blue ink and the black ink multiple times in a row. That's an obvious performance problem right there. And you don't need to go through the performance improvement process. But if you have an employee, like I said, where you have concerns about your legal liability, like if you weren't properly documenting their time and you can't prove how much overtime someone has worked because you weren't giving them the right means to document, you might be nervous about an FLSA wage and hour claim, and you really don't want them to leave on bad terms. And you don't want to not have proper documentation, especially if there's a possibility of some kind of discrimination complaint that people are going to say, it was really this, not my performance. So that's where the performance improvement plan comes in. Also, look at whether rehabilitation is even possible. I mean, it kind of goes to the ink example. If someone is regularly messing up and it's obvious that they just lack that skill set, is rehabilitation going to be possible here? And if not, maybe the PIP goal is to move them into another role or another set of duties, and see if they can provide value to your company in another way. So you're going to, you want to pick a timeline. I think that 30 days is too short. It's just not enough time for an employee to show improvement. I think 45 to 60 days is more of the sweet spot. 90 days, I think is too long. It's going to continue to drag your company down. And rather, you could save those extra 30 days as an extension. So if the employee has been under the PIP for 60 days and they're showing some improvement, but you're not fully satisfied that they're going to be rehabilitated and a success, and they want to continue to get better, give them another 30 days. So I think 45 to 60 days is a good one. An upcoming project is a great opportunity for a PIP. A lot of people think, well, no, we've got this big new project, I can't do that with them, or it's going to be distracting. It actually is a great opportunity because there is a beginning and an end with measurable goals and product typically. And so it's a really good time to put them to the test. And you're also going to have a manager or a supervisor or someone who is heavily involved with that project through the PIP. And so if they are on a crash course, you've got someone there to kind of help course correct. So it's not going to be a total disaster. So, and if it's appearing to be a total disaster, that's part of, the PIP, and you can, say you're really not on track here, and you're going to have documented evidence of those steps where they're really, really not doing what they're supposed to do, and you can end it early. So, okay. Preparing the plan. So I have with me right here a printout of a sample performance improvement plan. And if you email your pro bono partnership attorney, they can send to you this, this sample. It's not going to be tailored, obviously, to you. And if you need help or customization, you can reach out and we'll see if we can find an attorney to help with that. But I'll kind of go through some of the parts of a sample plan. So with preparing the plan, you want to pick 2 to 4 areas of improvement. Not too many. I mean, you've got to have like some concrete areas. Don't shy away from subjectivity. Like a bad attitude, for example, is subjective, but it's a big part of having a good employee and work environment. And so you can you have examples of bad attitudes. You also have examples of defensiveness. So it's okay to have subjective criteria in here. When you're going through this with them, though, you don't want to be accusatory, meaning like you don't want to say like you are a bad employee or you are a negative person. It's more like when you do this, it comes off as defensive. Or when you talk to our customers this way, it sets the wrong tone for the experience. And this is how we want you to change your behavior. It's behavior, not character flaw. So that really helps with them being more receptive to what you're saying to them, because the character flaw thing gets offensive and people get upset and get angry. It gets really personal. So you're also going to want specific examples to support these areas of improvement. So we'll hit the next one. For example, quality of work effort. That can translate into being on time to work, staying the full time, working 40 hours a week, documenting your time, and all the administrative stuff that may not be like client-based, billable work, but the stuff that shows that they really put an effort and they want things to be buttoned up and put together. So it can kind of be subjective, but at the same time, you're going to have these clear examples of what this Joe guy is not doing properly. So then also quality of work product. Again, that can be subjective. You can have measures of a quality product, but you also can have some people who are subjective on that, and that's okay. You don't have to shy away from that. And then you'll see a third area on the sample plan is the receptiveness to feedback. That creates a box for the problem employee. It puts it out there that your defensiveness and unwillingness to take feedback is a problem for us, and it's an area that we want you to improve on. It kind of sets them up to be like, I gotta be nice here, I need to work with them on this. And you'll notice the very first clause of this sample, as has been discussed with Joe. That right there it begins to cure your problems with documentation. It's like we've talked to this guy about this before, and he's going to be signing on to this document, and it's an agreement right there that you've had previous counseling. So that helps if you end up with a litigation issue. So let's see. Okay, and then if you read the next paragraph, it talks about the number of days the company's agreeing to provide additional support for the employee via this performance improvement plan. The employee will be expected to meet all the expectations set forth for the full 60 days. At the end of the plan, the employee will be expected to continue to meet all expectations, even with the resumption of normal management processes. So it's like, even if you do really well in the 60 days, you have to continue to do well. We want to see consistent improvement and performance. Okay, so the next one is, it shows a little bit of quality of work effort. It goes into, the utilization percentage is consistently among the lowest on the team. The employee does not report to work at consistent hours. Despite instruction on numerous occasions to enter his time on a daily basis, he consistently fails to do so, or he waits nearly 2 weeks to enter his time. So these are examples of quality of work effort. So now the next one, within each area of improvement of the plan, as you've said, you have to give, actually let's go back one. I forgot one note. At the beginning of that area, you want to explain why this is an important thing to your company. If you see right here, it says one of the most important performance competencies for a successful consultant at X company is independent drive and a sense of urgency. The company needs employees to demonstrate a sense of ownership of their work and a hunger for excellence on behalf of clients. and the employee has not successfully demonstrated these competencies related to the quality of work. You want to emphasize why this area of improvement is important to your company. Then you give specific examples of where they have failed, and then on the next slide, you give examples of what improvement is expected. And you want these to be specific so that you can, benchmark them. They can still be subjective, but you want to have those bullets in there so then you can pinpoint where they are not meeting expectations at the end of the 60 days. It also helps the employee to know what is expected, because if they don't have clear guidelines or examples, they're not going to know how you want them to improve. So you'll see on this example, employee must report to work at regular hours, Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5:30. These are the minimum hours required. Client demands may dictate longer hours, either in the office or from home. Then employee must submit time on a daily basis. And then if there's not billable client tasks, then the employee must proactively seek utilization eligible work and then treat that work with the same care and attention as a client task. And then you're going to have other goals that the employee has articulated. Get the employee to invest. And we'll talk about the timing and how you form this, but they're going to have some time to think about this area of improvement. This is what they're saying I need to do. What else do I think that I need to do to show them that I want to improve in this area and that I can be this employee for you? Okay. Next slide. Also part of that section, of each section of improvement, you'll have, the reason why it's important, how they're not meeting it, what is expected, and then the assistance that is going to be provided by the company. This shows that this is a team effort. This is, we're not just throwing you in here. We're going to be here to help you. We actually want you to succeed and rehabilitate. So you'll have examples like supervisor will provide refresher training on time entry. Supervisor will provide instructions on billing client time. The supervisor will help brainstorm ideas when non-billable tasks are not available, or when billable tasks are not available. And then also other assistance as agreed to by the employee and the company. As agreed to meaning, like, if the employee says, well, I think that I need, something kind of unreasonable to meet these goals, you don't have to agree to that. Just take it under consideration and try to provide what you think is reasonable to assist them with it. It's kind of like the reasonable accommodation process with disability discrimination. The employee is not entitled to the accommodation of their choice. They're only entitled to a reasonable accommodation. So that's part of where discussion and formulation of the plan comes into play. Okay. Talking points. You want to just get right to it. Joe, you're not meeting our expectations. And you don't want it to be presented in a scary fashion. This is not, we're going to terminate you or anything like that. It's more like, you're not meeting our expectations, and we want to work with you to explain and help you to meet our expectations. What can we do to help you improve and be a better employee? You can say, maybe our expectations weren't clear initially, because that happens sometimes where it's like, well, I didn't know I was supposed to be doing this, this, and this, or no one told me, or I missed that day of training or something, and it was never followed up with me. And so part of this process is just making expectations very clear. You want to go over what's expected, and you also want to show respect and potential. Like, you're being respectful to this employee, and we're saying, we recognize we hired you for a reason. You have this potential to meet our expectations, and we just need to be on the same page about it and do what we need to do to get you there. This is a team effort, and the plan is going to have mutual obligations. Supervisors are going to be involved, the employee is going to be involved. And so it's, it's go team. It's not scary, we're terminating you kind of thing. You want to anticipate questions, and that's most people are going to ask questions like, what happened? How was I not meeting your expectations? What about this project or this or that? That's normal. And you want to, answer those questions. You may also want to answer some questions with questions to kind of understand more about what they're seeing and why they're asking those questions. Use your, use your discretion on that. There may be, especially if you've got a true 5%er coming in here, they may be very defensive. And there's a line of defensive and getting emotional versus like making a big scene, and what's a fireable scene? Obviously lashing back and cussing at the supervisors as you have this conversation can be a terminable offense. And you want to be prepared for those necessary contingencies, like what is the termination process? Like what property do we need to seize from this employee now as they're going to leave after this meeting? But, an employee who gets emotional and upset is not somebody that you have to fire or want to fire. They're human. And part of the plan and process involves 2 different meetings, relatively close in time. And, you start on a Friday and you have another meeting on a Monday. Give them that weekend to collect themselves. I mean, this could be somebody who's been with your company for 20 years. Their performance has really slacked off in the last 5, especially after this divorce or this or that. And working at your company, especially these nonprofits, are passionate employees. And they're probably going to be really upset thinking about possibly losing their job. So getting emotional is normal. So don't freak out if that happens. Don't terminate them if that happens. Give them the weekend to, collect themselves. Let's see. Okay. And this is a snippet on the next slide of the beginning of the performance improvement plan that kind of helps to cover you a little bit. It explains employees been working at the company for X amount of time at various checkpoints within that time, which helps you to kind of explain. We've done a lot of counseling here. We just don't have it documented. Oops, but happens to a lot of people. So at various checkpoints within that time, his supervisors have discussed actions needed to improve his work and meet the company's job performance expectations. Following these occasions, employee has generally demonstrated immediate and modest, but not sustained and comprehensive improvement. This is a soft equivocation. It's not saying you're a horrible employee. Like, don't overstate the issue. Give credit where credit is due. Sometimes he's been good, sometimes he's not been good. So you want to, point out, like, they've demonstrated some improvement sometimes, but it's not sustained and comprehensive, and we want consistency. So at this point, employee has received formal and informal feedback and guidance on several occasions, and his performance is still not completely meeting company's expectations on a consistent basis. So then, the company is willing to move into a limited period of significantly more structured supervision in the hope that more express direction and rapid feedback will help the employee understand and deliver the quality of effort and work product that the company requires and of which we believe he is capable. That's, the injection of respect, and we know that you have this potential. So we're not saying that you're a horrible, slack. We just know you can do this if you want to, and we want to see if you want to do this. So, okay. The PIP initiation. So next slide. Early on a Friday afternoon is a good time. It's a good time because you're not calling them in at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon to send them home, but you're going to give them the weekend to think about things. And if you meet with someone at like noon or 1 or something like that, it's going to give you time to meet with them and then give them a few more hours at their desk. And the other employees are not going to see, well, Joe got called in to the conference room with 2 managers, and now Joe is packing his box, or his desk up and putting stuff in boxes. It just causes less like work anxiety for everyone. So you want to have two managers there to walk through the performance improvement plan. And you're going to have a draft, but it's not going to be final because you're going to need some time to get the feedback from the employee. You're going to want to answer questions. You're going to want to, after this meeting, after you go through, you're not meeting expectations, these are the areas we want you to improve, we want to help you with this, this is where you have failed and this is what we want to see specifically. Let the employee take that afternoon to look through this, kind of gather themselves at their desk and think on, wow, okay, how have I been missing all this? How have I been messing this up? What can I do to improve? And your other employees are going to see them sitting at the desk working. They don't know what they're working on. They don't need to know. But during that time, you want to be available to them if you can. And minimally, you want to check in with them before they leave for the end of the day. So like 4:30, 4:45, pop in and say, like, hey, do you have everything you need? Do you have any questions before we go into the weekend? Excited to meet with you on Monday so we can get started on this. It gives it a better team effort, team feel to it instead of some scary thing just happened. And the other employees are going to see that good vibe too, so they're going to be less freaked out. So then you want to schedule your next meeting for kind of late Monday morning. Open it up with questions. Let the employee ask questions because I'm sure they're going to have a lot from the weekend. Then you want to fill in the places where they're going to, provide feedback on what goals they want to meet, what things they need from you to help them to meet these goals. You want to start filling that in and finalize the performance improvement plan. And then once it's finalized, have the employee, there should be a signature line to sign off on it. You want to be honest and not prejudice either way. You don't want to be we really want to see if you can do this and have the attitude that they can't. You want to be really open-minded about it. So that's kind of the general way you want to go about creating it. Check-ins. This is important because you've got to monitor what they're doing and keep them in check. These should be employee arranged and employee led. So you are to check in with Mary, your supervisor, every week. And you need to arrange that meeting, ideally on Thursdays or Fridays or, whatever. So you need to reach out to her, you need to schedule it, you guys meet, and you need to lead and tell her, this is what I've been doing. This is how I've been meeting this. This is what I'm working on for this big project. And this is how it is complying with this performance improvement plan. If they don't do that, then you're getting your documentation right there. If they're failing to set up these meetings, it's okay, you're making this easy for us. Candidly assess their progress and the trajectory and their potential. So if they're not on track, they're falling behind, say that to them during these meetings. And you want to make notes of that conversation that you had, whether it's in an email to your supervisor or just handwritten notes, however it works for you. Then the employee is going to need to create a follow-up memo after every check-in too. Say, this is what we talked about. This is where you said I am improving. This is where you said I'm not improving. And this is what I'm going to do to fix it for the rest of this PIP. And you also, like I said, take notes. But this is all creating documentation that you need. So the next one, what is this one? Regardless of whether employees assign. This gives the example of what they're supposed to be doing regularly. You may have them sending an email to their supervisor every day saying, this is what I did today and this is what I'm doing tomorrow. Or these are the challenges that I faced and this is why I couldn't do this. I need this to be able to do this. That kind of thing. It's It may be a lot to do every single day, but it depends on your needs. Let's see. Okay, we can hit next. Keeping your foot on the gas. Pull the trigger as early as necessary and as appropriate. So like I said, if they're not following through, if they are obviously going to really screw up this project, and they're not setting these meetings, they're not sending you progress reports, they're really failing, you can go ahead and terminate. An ongoing search for opportunities. If you need to extend it for them, you can extend it. You are in the driver's seat here. An important provision in any performance improvement plan is noting the at-will relationship that you have. Almost every single state has at-will employment, meaning like this KIP is not a contract. Like we've set it for 60 days, but if you demonstrate certain things that you cannot do for us, that you're not taking certain actions, we can go ahead and terminate you. It just avoids confusion all around. Wrapping it up. Note there are 3 possible outcomes. The success memo, the extension, and the separation. The success memo is really important. Celebrate the success. If Joe successfully completes his performance improvement plan and rehabilitates, tell him that, create the success memo, encourage him, give them a coffee or a book or a gift card or whatever is kind of in line with your company culture. Tell them that they did well and make them feel appreciated. If you have an opportunity to tell other employees what a great job Joe did on this project, obviously without mentioning the performance improvement plan, but just do it. If you have a monthly employee or company-wide meeting or lunch and you kind of go over things that happened in that previous month, be sure to highlight that Joe knocked it out of the park and he did such a great job, and we gave him a Starbucks gift card, or we gave him this book to continue his awesomeness or something like that. That is a really great way to encourage your other employees to knock it out of the park too. And it's going to make them feel better and happier all around. So then, if you have a separation, it will not be a surprise to the employee at this point. It's like, I know that I failed. You told me what I was supposed to do. I didn't do it, and I know that I didn't do it because you've been monitoring me regularly for the last 2 months. So you've kind of solved that surprise element issue. And this is kind of any separation general advice. Practical preparation, you need to be prepared to explain to them what they didn't do for you that you expected of them. Talking point-based discussion. You want to be respectful and dignified, and it's not that you are a poor performer. You are not a smart person, or you're not smart enough to be here. This is what we needed from you, and this is what you failed to deliver, and it's just not working. Or you're not capable of having this, sunshine attitude that we need for a customer service rep, or, whatever it is. You want to find the right way to say that to them, but being honest at the same time. You want to give the option to resign in some circumstances. Like I said, if you've had an employee with your company for 30 years and their performance failed, not because of maybe some health condition or age, but just because they stopped doing what they normally did and what you need them to do, their passion fizzled or whatever, but they were still a valuable employee for a long time, give them the option to resign instead of making it look like a firing. that doesn't affect you as the employer. You're still going to be able to move forward and hire someone else, but it gives them a better feeling, of like, well, I just decided to go ahead and resign, and it may be appropriate to give them a separation package too. Maybe like what you would do if you had to lay off some people or something like that. 2 weeks of pay or whatever feels appropriate. Maybe a month of pay, or it's up to you. And address any uncertainties. So if the employee is uncertain as to how they didn't deliver under that performance improvement plan, you want to be prepared to explain that in detail with them and go over, the check-in memos and the PIP plan itself. So then they're not walking away confused, and everyone, it just feels a little more amicable that way. Next slide is don't ruin it, which means don't ignore, and this is not about the separation expressly, this is just kind of in general, don't ignore or downplay legitimate progress. Like if you don't particularly like Joe, but he starts to perform better and meet all the expectations provided in the plan, like you can't ignore that. I mean, you are rehabilitating him, and if you terminate at the end after he has shown that he can do all this, then it's a sham and you're going to create problems down the road. You've just kind of undermined your whole plan. So, I mean, your goals are either improvement or a clean separation, one or the other. Don't begin planning termination before the employee has had a chance to go through the PIP. Like, don't post the job opening before you've terminated and assessed. I mean, that you'd be surprised. You see that, and it's it's not a good plan. There might be some circumstances where it's okay, but they're very, very limited. I encourage you to reach out to a lawyer first before you do that. Don't move the goalposts without notice and input from the employee. So like in the middle of this plan, don't change what's expected, because that's just going to create more problems, and it feels like you're a moving target, or you're giving them a moving target, and they're going to get frustrated and angry and they're going to sue you. So, and then don't fail to document your follow-ups. I'm like a broken record on that, but I mean, the more you put in writing or in email follow-up, thank you for our discussion today regarding blah, blah, blah. We talked about this, this, and this. I'm excited to see how you deliver X, Y, and Z, over the next 2 weeks or whatever. Just put as much as you can in writing, sticking to performance issues. Okay, last slide is takeaways. Specific contemporaneous performance feedback is the #1 strategy. I mean, you have to get good at being direct and open with people and having difficult, courageous conversations. Focus on the problem, not the employee. It's kind of like your behavior isn't what we want versus you. And separating poor performers is possible. I know that there are some situations where employers get really anxious thinking about this employee who has complained about discrimination multiple times. We just know that she's going to sue or whatever. Like, you can separate in a clean manner from these employees. And even if they do sue, you're going to find the right way to protect yourself from it by implementing a PIP. Okay, and then the PIPs require authenticity, preparation, follow through, and patience. I mean, you have to be on board for this, but you can't just get angry and terminate, on the spot without thinking through how can I back up my decision here. So that is the end of the presentation, and I'm sure we may have some questions.
Yes. One question is, would this work for smaller companies, like if you just have 5 to 10 employees and if you don't have multiple layers of supervisors, who should be running a PIP, or is that not necessary at a smaller company?
I mean, I think it's a great thing to utilize in a smaller company. I mean, I know that some of the discrimination laws don't necessarily apply or kick in at certain employee counts, but you do have other lawsuits that they could bring that aren't just, a federal discrimination law. And so you do want to avoid making them angry and suing you and, disrupting, bringing in any emotion like anger and tension in a smaller setting I think it's worse because everybody's feeling it. There aren't as many people that kind of diffuse that. So I think a performance improvement plan is a great idea, even if you have 5 employees, but you have to find a person with bandwidth who can manage it and meet with that employee. And it can be much more personal that way because it's a small setting. But yeah, I think it's appropriate for any size company.
And another question is, what if you have a success story and then a month later the employee starts to slack off again?
Well, at that point, you start to implement more feedback. I mean, say like what happened, and document these conversations and start papering the file even more. You don't have to go through another performance improvement plan. You can say like, you've slacked out, you did great for these 3 months, 2 of those during the PIP, a month after, and now you're showing the behavior that was the problem. If I don't see a turnaround in a week or two, we're gonna terminate you. Or you can make the decision right then and there because you will have had the documentation and you can document they're doing again exactly what we asked them not to do. They're showing that they're not going to improve consistently.
And in terms of documentation, should employees email you the memos, and should you provide your notes to them as well?
Don't provide your notes to them. I mean, they don't need to see that. And I mean, it's not that you're saying things that you're not going to say to them, but it may be some, you may not have written it in the most, gentle manner. You may find better ways to say it later, but it's not going to hurt in litigation to be very point blank, didn't do this well. But think about how you write your notes. I mean, think about the adjectives you use, and are they respectful and nice, but honest, versus like maybe that's a little bit excessive, or like an exaggeration. You really just think about that as you're taking notes, or typing them after the conversation. But yeah, keep them in there in a separate file on that employee. But I do think asking the employee to email you is a great way to create at least an electronic record if you have to go back there, instead of like them handing you this memo and you losing it. So if they hand you a memo, I recommend scanning and saving it, and then also keeping that file. So I'm a big fan of electronic documentation. So,
what if during the course of a PIP, it appears that a manager is working with the employee to kind of not follow the process?
Oh, so like the person who's supposed to be managing the PIP over the employee
Mm-hmm.
is kind of, in his mind, is a sham.
Yeah.
Like he's not giving credit where it's due.
Or giving too much credit.
Oh, he's giving too much credit.
Yeah.
Well, I think this goes into selecting the right person to manage it. If they have an obvious like best friendship and that it's not going to be true feedback, you may want to either have that manager work with someone else on it or have someone else do it.
Okay.
So, and if you start to see it going in that direction, just step in and say, I want to help with the rest of this. I want to, or have someone else step in, so that then you have 2 people weighing in on it, because it's going to keep the other person more honest if they are bending the rules a little bit for their favorite employee that they don't want to see terminated.
But probably shouldn't go ahead and terminate the employee. You should let them try to complete the PIP with another supervisor.
Yeah. I mean, because you haven't gotten the documentation you need. If anything, you've dug a worse hole, because if you have this manager who is like giving overly glowing reviews that are not warranted, and then you terminate, then it's like, what happened here? It's harder to demonstrate in court, or it's harder to get out of in general to disprove their credibility than your manager's credibility on their feedback of the employee.
Okay.
So.
And one more question: if you're going to start the PIP process on early Friday afternoon, should you give the employee any sort of notice, or should you just show up at their desk?
I wouldn't say show up at the desk at that moment. I suggest in the morning, like first thing that Friday morning at 8, say, hey, we want to meet with you at noon today, or maybe at 10 o'clock even, so then I wouldn't like schedule it the Monday or Tuesday or even day before, because then it might create kind of unnecessary anxiety for that employee, and want to be nice if you can. Doesn't hurt to be nice, right? So.
Well, that's all the questions we have, Christine. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. I hope you guys enjoyed.